Today we're looking at Noodler's Cayenne. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Noodler's Cayenne is kind of an orangey red ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done, and we see this really light pink work its way up into an orange and then that kind of red at the top, which gives it some of its real shading abilities. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now it noticeably does not creep nearly as high on the page. The pink on the bottom is much darker. The orange starts being left behind much, so it really compresses way down. It makes me feel like it would want to stay given some real time, but not completely. But again, the noticeable darker pink at the bottom is what stands out. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to hold up on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. The highlighter seems to perform pretty well. It doesn't seem to reactivate and feathers spread all over the place, so this feels like it would be a good ink to use in a note-taking situation. Water completely reactivates and starts pulling almost all that ink off the page, which is surprising, but not with the chromatography. So it shouldn't take more than water to remove it from the page. Pen flush did very much the same as the water. We see some of the pink still left. We see a lot of that orange getting pushed away. So while pen flush certainly removes a whole lot more, I don't think you would need it to clean your pens. Bleach, as would be expected, completely removes it from the page. For the inks I've tested, I found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Cayenne has a viscosity of 1.61. That places it in the red. That makes it a very, very wet ink. This is a high-flowing ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples with the extra fine and medium nib done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found the average dry time is 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. And Noodler's Cayenne has a dry time of 20 seconds. So while it's on the slower side of normal, it is still a very normal dry time, especially given its super high viscosity. Now let's look at the writing sample. I got this ink in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and wholly shading. This is the opposite right here of the Apache Sunset. This is great. If you like Apache Sunset, goes from light to dark, this is the opposite and beautiful dark to light. Amazing. And all the way through. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Shade? Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll take it. 13 seconds to dry, it's not unreasonable. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and watch out for that shading. It's great. I can't say much more than that on it. Everything's got shading everywhere. Beautiful. 19 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium don't show as much shading that's on there because it is darker in the scrubby. The smear says I could likely recover this, which, great. I look at Tomoe River paper. Next, I have no bleeding. I have ghosting because I wrote on Tomoe River. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Lost the shade. I hate you, Tomoe. I hate that you do that. You're so well behaved as a paper, except letting that stuff come through. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It's lost. 20 seconds to dry. And if I look at the medium, ignoring where my thumb goes, because that's the only spot we see any shading, the medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 31 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby show us that we're not going to get any color variation in this ink, and the smear says, you wrote it on Tomoe River, it's your fault, and you can't recover it. Rhodia paper. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade with the 1.1. Just goes down a bit wetter there, and I think it all gets to pool on top. The extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and I definitely get shading the whole way through. Nice. 15 seconds to dry. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and shading all over. I can't even just point out where all the shading is on this stuff. That's why I've done it on the writing samples, because there's so much shading. It's beautiful. 21 seconds to dry. I'll wait for that for the shade this ink gets. The scrubby in both the extra fine and the medium shows we're going to get plenty of shading, and the smear test says I can likely recover it. So I decided to test this with yellow background. So I went to the yellow Rhodia and got no bleeding and no ghosting as expected. Look at that. So the color holds. The color holds even with that yellow background, but what did that do to the shading? That's what becomes interesting. So there's your warning sign. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we lost the shading with the yellow background, which I sort of expected when I did it. That's why I did this. I sort of expected that the yellow, because it shades towards the orange and yellow spectrum, that I would lose a lot of it, and I did. 15 seconds to dry. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but we definitely keep some of the shading with the medium. We keep some of it, not tons of it, but some of it. So when it's wetter, it does manage to hold on here. Although looking at the smear, it looks like it was writing a little dry that day. 21 seconds to dry. The scrubby on the extra fine shows no color variation. The scrubby on the medium shows a little color variation left to right, which is what we're getting in the writing. The smear test says we would be able to recover it. It also shows us how wet or dry the pen was writing that day. So I checked this on Franklin Christoph paper, which gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gave no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. It absorbs a bit faster into this paper, and it's not as coated. It's not coated like the other papers. So that's one of the reasons that's going to happen. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. No shade on this paper. Also a result of the tone and its absorbent, how absorbent the paper is. So it's a little more absorbent paper, and being an untreated paper, it's going to absorb in, and that's all right. 7 seconds to dry. Medium nib gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and I see color variation in the word brown, in the word fox, in lazy, in dog. So I was not expecting this color variation here, and I got it. And it's always nice to be surprised by the performance of an ink on a paper. After enough samples, you do get to a point where you say, I sort of think I know what's going to happen. And this surprised me. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine and the medium show us that the extra fine is not going to have any color variation, which we really didn't get. The medium shows us some color variation, not huge amounts. The smear says we could likely recover this if we did smear it while we were writing. Again, shows us how wet a pen is on a given day. So that's what I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Cayenne, I would prefer to find an ink that will complement its color on the page. I went with Diamine's Graphite because it's a very nice gray to black ink. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Noodler's Cayenne? I think this ink has a real pop to it as a color. It's absolutely fantastic in its shading. It's the polar opposite of Apache Sunset, where Apache Sunset can gradiate its way into darker. This one seems to gradiate its way lighter, which is really cool to see. Thanks for watching.